You're very welcome to Tree Talk episode 211 with myself, Jack Neville, and Matt O'Callaghan of the Weekly Observer and Vale Star. Yet another busy weekend for the Limerick clubs. We've three football sides in a Munster Club semi-final action. We obviously had three hurling sides last week. Two of them reached finals. We also had the Premier 21's hurling final and the Junior B hurling final. And of course, the Dare are in London this weekend for their All-Ireland quarterfinals. So stay tuned for preview and reviews of all those games and more.
The impression of the game you get out with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Good afternoon, Matt. Recording on a Wednesday morning. As I just look to my left to my monitor, it's Morocco and Croatia in the World Cup. I suppose we are a GA podcast, but it's hard to ignore the World Cup and the abundance of games. And you'd love to see sort of a GA World Cup where you had 4 games on a day, wouldn't you?
Well, absolutely, Jack. That would be actually dreamland. Although, I suppose if you could bilocate during the summer, you could get 4 games maybe in a day, all right, But look, it's getting huge coverage and it's a huge event. But I think the integrity of the competition is in question. With first of all, how it was awarded to Qatar and a lot of the sideshows that are going on there with regard to Qatarian rules and all that sort of thing, and you just wonder. The main stadium, which housed the opening ceremony, is 30 miles into the desert.
Yeah.
What use is it going to be when the World Cup is over? Like it's going to be like a lighthouse in a bog, brilliant but useless. I'm not into. I'm a football fan, as you know, and I'm not as enthusiastic about it as I normally would be, Jack. First of all, because we don't have the Republic of Ireland there, but apart from that, from a football perspective, I think it has been overshadowed by everything that has gone on since it has been awarded to Qatar, and I think that is unfortunate. And of course, we had a huge surprise yesterday with the defeat of Argentina.
Of course.
Tell me a World Cup finals that there hasn't been a huge surprise like that. I think that South Korea beat Portugal in 1966. It's par for the course. One of these. You weren't around, Jack. No. It's one of these. Things that you're going to get surprise results and unlikely results, but they're particularly usually in the first rounds because the competition seems to bed down, but it leaves Argentina with a bit of a mountain to climb to participate in the concluding stages of the competition. But look, it's good. It's up and running. Let's hope now that the focus for the next 20 odd days that's left of it, there was 29 days in total, I think, that the focus will be solely on football, and that these sideshows will be switched off.
Yeah, I suppose after we've seen most of the teams once, we'll see them all by the end of Thursday, I think. If you were to call a winner.
Oh, sure. Look, it's very hard to, they should be handing over the trophy to England. if we were to read all the narrative after their win against Iran. But I find it very hard to see the winner coming outside of France, Spain, and Brazil.
Yeah, France were good last night. In fairness, we haven't seen Brazil yet.
Maybe a shout there for Belgium. Very, very good squad of players. Can they do it? I know about Mr. Martinez. He was manager of Everton for a number of years. Their manager, we won't go there. And we certainly won't go there with the possibility of he returning to Everton. But yeah, look, the French will be very formidable, Jack. I would be leaning towards them, you know.
Yeah, I'd lean towards Belgium. You know, they're going to have to win eventually. And I think with the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, and then it could be their year. But that's enough about the soccer and the World Cup. As I said, we're here to talk GA, and we have 3 huge games in the football this weekend. We'll start with those, and we'll look back at the Ireland then later on in the podcast. Obviously, the standout fixture is this Sunday in Semple Stadium, Newcastle West versus Clonmel Commercials in the Munster semi-final. And when you see those two names paired together, Matt, you kind of automatically go back to 2015 and a huge missed opportunity for Newcastle West. I know they had, I think it was a 23 years gap from their previous Limerick title, but they had the game won and conceded 6 points in a row in the last 5 minutes. And we were talking to Ian and Jimmy the other night, you know, and you could hear from Ian that they are thinking about that game and are really hoping to avenge that result.
Absolutely, and I think Ian nailed it. Actually, you know, it's a result that will rankle with all, not just Newcastle West supporters, but with Limerick supporters, because Newcastle West went to Clonmel that day as rank outsiders, total underdogs, and they did everything, Jack, but win the football match. You know, that is the pity about it. And what transpired after, you know, in that they went on and beat Nemo Rangers in the final in Mallow, you know, and we saw something similar replicated in 2020 when Limerick were so unlucky to lose the Munster semi-final in the Gaelic grounds to Tipperary, that huge point from Conor Sweeney that forced it to extra time. And then Tipperary went on and won the Munster final. That particular day in 2015, as I said, is, you know, Newcastle West did everything but win the game. They seemed to be in control of it, but lost their way at a crucial stage, and Clonmel Commercials saw it out. Now we've a similar situation in terms of form going into this semi-final, in that Newcastle West again will be outsiders, and I'm sure from you were there, Jack, and we talking to the lads the other night, you know, that's something that, you know, they won't mind. They probably will be quite happy with it, because going into the game, all the pedigree is with Commercials, Clonmel Commercials. Like, they travel to Cork in the quarterfinal, rank outsiders, and an 8-point win on Lee side over Nemo Rangers, who are the specialist team in the competition in Munster and All Ireland levels. And you know, that gives them the right to be firm favourites. But I have this sense of about Newcastle West, Jack, that I honestly think that Newcastle West had the perfect preparation for the challenge that they're facing on Sunday, with the semi-final and the final, the Limerick final. Like the game that they got against Monaleen, and I did say to some of the Newcastle West connections afterwards, you know, when they were getting a palpable sense of relief that they'd got over the line, but it was the ideal test for going forward and going into a final. And it was similar in the final. They got a real test, like coming down the home straight, coming down in injury time. In the final, in normal time, Newcastle West, Jack, were on the ropes until Dan Doherty came up there and got that crucial equaliser, forced the game to extra time now. They seem to find a new gear in extra time, Newcastle West.
Yeah.
But I would be quite confident that that Newcastle West are not just going to Thurles on Sunday to make up the numbers or be anything a sideshow or a big part in this game, because I think they're quite capable of giving a very good account for themselves, and quite capable, Jack, of being very there or thereabouts at the end, because we see Newcastle West in patches, and it's when I say in patches, if they were to maintain it over an hour, it would take a very, very good team to beat them. And I'm talking about when they decide to drive forward their teams. They tend to have a propensity for times during games to go lateral.
Yeah, definitely.
Which at times can be annoying for the simple reason that they are a very formidable and they are a very exciting attacking force. And of course, Jimmy Lee was at pains there to tell us on Monday night, Jack, about the importance of the middle third, and it is hugely important. And of course, I suppose when it comes to players that can play the middle third game and can link out of defence up and into the attack, they certainly have experts in that in their two All-Star nominees, Ian Corbett and Cian Sheehan.
Yeah,
and it is obviously something that Newcastle West have worked on. So I'm very hopeful, Jack, going to Thurles on Sunday, that Newcastle West, it's going to be difficult for them. Call a spade a spade. It's going to be difficult for them, but they're capable of upsetting the odds, Jack. And we've also seen another great characteristic that they have developed over the last 2 years, in particular, is their ability to see out close games and their ability to win close games. And we saw that the different spectrums of that in the last two rounds of the Limerick Championship, when they closed out Monaleen from being just ahead, and when they rescued the game against the Dare.
yeah.
That is one of the great characteristics. And of course, another thing that we didn't realise until they appeared in the county final, in that during the group stages and the semi-final, they hadn't conceded a goal. Like in the entire championship, in the entire 7 games that they played in Limerick, the first goal came a minute before halftime from a penalty against them. So,
Yeah.
they have a very, very tight, organised, and disciplined defence. But they'll want it on Sunday. They'll want it on Sunday because this is a very, very formidable Clonmel commercial side. There's no use in saying otherwise. 6 of these lads, I think, Jack, were involved when Tipperary beat Cork in the Munster final in 2020. And Michael Quinlan is an all-star, and you've fellas like Kevin Fahey, Jason Lonergan, Jack Kennedy, Coleman Kennedy, Patrick Lurham, extremely, extremely good players. Now, they beat them an inch in the Tipperary final. Lopsided Tipperary final, didn't get a real test, I would imagine, judging by the scoreline of 1-10 to 1-2. Which would suggest maybe not the most exciting of games, but they did it, and then went on and as we've already said, beat Nemo Rangers. But I'm quite hopeful for Newcastle West, and like we've seen the new players coming through in Newcastle West this year, and Rowan O'Connor, Todd Donovan, Emmett Richter. We've seen the emergence of Brian Nix. And we all know about Dermot Kelly,
Yeah.
and we're at the lower end of the age spectrum now when we're talking about these players. Like, to me, Emmett Richter has been a revelation at midfield.
Yeah, he's a fine footballer.
Particularly outstanding in the semi-final, had a very, very good final. And, like you throw those in with the experience that they have, and the likes of the Cian Sheehans and the Ian Corbetts of this world, and what about Big Mac on the edge of the square? We'll say probably, what about him? The goal king,
Probably a player of the championship, Mike Mack.
If Newcastle West can use Big Mac on Sunday, he's going to cause a lot of problems for commercials.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose you mentioned that game, Parky Queeve. They really show what they were all about, Clonmel, but probably, we're at their peak that day. Anything less, and there's a big opportunity for Newcastle. They have the monkey off the back with regards that win over the Dyer last year. That was their first win in Munster in 40 years, I think, so monkey off the back. Clonmel are favourites, and rightly so, but, you wouldn't rule out Newcastle because they do match up well in terms of that middle third you mentioned and good powerful runners. So it'll be an interesting game, definitely, this Sunday in Thurles.
But Jack, the Newcastle West back is a very strong one because they had a couple of monkeys on it. They had the monkey of not winning in Munster, and they also had the monkey of not completing back-to-back titles in Limerick. So all the monkeys are gone, Jack.
Yeah, no, it's a formidable Newcastle West side. Previous day on it's Sunday as well in the Piarsaigh and Ballina in the intermediate semi-final in the Piarsaigh. Obviously, won intermediate in Limerick at the first time of asking. We spoke about that in detail and their lack of playing time and all that, but they responded well with semi-final and final victories. Really impressive against Rowan Moore in the semi-final as well. Matt double score winners, 2-10 to 1-5. They play a Ballina side, another Tipperary game, but they'll have semi-home advantage in Kilmallock to use their effect in the semi-final. I'd be favouring the Piarsaigh in this one. I don't know too much about Ballina. Obviously, they were Tipperary champions, but the Piarsaigh should definitely have no fear in terms of this game, and they're obviously beaten last week in the hurling, so they'll be really keen to rectify it this weekend.
Yeah, it's a competition. First of all, they will be anxious from a club perspective, even though there's no crossover between the hurling and the football, or very, very little, minimal anyway. They would be anxious to atone for the defeat to Ballygunner last weekend and get to the final. And Jack, from looking at it, they look quite capable of doing it because they won a very, very good Limerick championship, and they won a Limerick championship at the first time of asking, which is not always very easy to do when you suffer relegation. Sometimes it's very, very hard to pick it up immediately, and there usually is, when you suffer relegation, that there's sort of a big turnover of players because following relegation, players at the upper end of the age scale tend to call time on their careers, and but the Piarsaigh have regrouped now. They have been in the competition before, back in 2013. When they got a walkover in the semi-final from the Tipperary champions. There were no Tipperary champions, or there were Tipperary champions, but they were not in time for the Munster Club Championship. And then they faced in cold into a semi-final against the Cork champions, Valley Rovers, at the Gaelic Grounds. And were very, very unlucky on the day, after Valley Rovers getting a good start. They're very unlucky on the day to lose 111 to 8 points. And there are 3 or 4 players from that side that are still around, like Kieran Derrick, Kevin Nolan and Evan Egan, and to give him that bit of experience. But what I see about the Piarsaigh, Jack, and I think we're totally in agreement in this now. We fancied them from the start. As I said in previous podcasts, I went off them for the simple reason that I thought that they had a lousy group phase through no fault of their own, getting 2 walkovers. But they picked it up and have shown measurable improvement game on game. Won a very, very good Limerick semi-final against Mungret St Pauls. Won a very, very good final against Drumbradford, who were on a high, and did very, very well in the manner, Jack, as distinct from just the victory, the manner of the victory over the Waterford champions, Rowan Moore. So it augurs very, very well for the Piarsaigh. Of course, I was hugely disappointed, I have to say, Jack, when the Piarsaigh were relegated last year, for the simple reason that I actually loved their their football philosophy and the way that they play the game. And sometimes it is not conducive to getting the results that they deserve. And I would argue that they were relegated because they weren't prepared to sacrifice their principles of playing good, open, expansive football, and which you're in a relegation dogfight isn't always the way to get out of it. But look, they're back in senior ranks this year. They're in a Munster semi-final. They're 60 minutes away from a Munster final, and I'm quite happy at the way that they have progressed over the season. That they have a real good chance of beating Ballina. Now, Ballina will be playing senior football for the first time ever. Next year. They beat Mullinahone in the Tipperary final. I think they've come up through the junior ranks to win the intermediate championship. Now, their standout player, of course, would be Stephen O'Brien, an all-star nominee, Munster medal winner with Tipperary in 2020. They also have Michael Breen, the Tipperary senior hurler, who is a decent exponent of the big ball code as well, But I'm going from the Piarsaigh. I think the Piarsaigh have what it takes, to take another step towards provincial honours and possibly set up a final meeting with either Kanturk or Rathmore.
Yeah, I think they'll go one better than they did in 14. Ballina reached the Munster final last year in junior level, beat Mount Collins in the first round. Obviously, Mount Collins were Limerick's representatives after Father Casey's won the junior championship, but they lost to Kneegwilla. But they have good pedigree. But I would fancy.
Yeah, but they lost very heavily to Kneegwilla in the final, Jack. But obviously, what I said about Ballina, fair play to them. They went and put that behind them. Regroup for the intermediate championship in Tipperary this year, and won it.
All credit to them.
I have a sense that I think the Piarsaigh have the wherewithal to get through on this one, Jack.
Yeah, no, I definitely be siding with the Piarsaigh in that one on Sunday in Kilmallock. Obviously, on Saturday, even though it's the junior clash, it's probably the glamour tie of the weekend. Anything with David Clifford these days, it turns to gold. But Castlemahon in Cooliroo, in fairness to them, they got their house in order. They're going to host the game, which is really, it's a huge day for the club, regardless of how the game goes, to have the Cliffords, 2 All-Ireland medalist, the current footballer of the year. Paddy's a 2-time All-Star as well, but Castlemahon will definitely be up against it when they play Fossa this Saturday in Cooliroo. But first and foremost, they came through their game against Shamrock, showed great determination after winning the Premier Junior Championship. Be a huge step up, but they've some quality players to trouble Fossa, but there's no doubt that the Kerry champions will be favourites on Saturday.
Yeah, they will. It's going to be one of those where you moments when the Clifford, when David Clifford and Paddy roll into West Limerick on Saturday, it's a dream, and it's bringing into opposition, Jack, the 2 All-Ireland winning senior full forwards this year, Seamus Flanagan with Limerick and David Clifford with Kerry.
I think it was hurling. We'd definitely be back in Fiona, but.
And very, 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 very interesting. We had the performance of David Clifford against Listry in the Kerry final, but Seamus Flanagan kept his best performance for Castlemahon to the provincial game against Shamrocks the last day out, when he scored a goal and 5 points. The goal won for the ages. So that all adds to it. But first of all, congratulations to everybody involved in the Fiona Castlemahon Club on hosting such a big day. Jack, Quaid Park in normal circumstances is a lovely, lovely venue to visit.
Yeah, it's very nice.
And they have their house in order, and it didn't surprise me that they pulled out all the stops to ensure that that this glamour tie, and you're right, it's the glamour tie of the three, probably the glamour tie of the entire weekend, because there is glamour attached to every place that David Clifford goes, and it's one to really, really look forward to. And it's very, very easy just to dismiss it and say, sure, look, Fossa are going to get into the Munster final. And look, all the punditry and all the form suggests that they will. But I'd be confident that Castlemahon will give a good account of themselves. Now, Castlemahon have been through this route before, Jack. And they got to a Munster final. They got a great win in Drummond-Inch in the first round, beat Coolmeen of Clare in Cooley-Roo, and lost to Kieran Monaleen on a day which I've said before in this podcast that I thought they gave far too much respect to Kiel and lost by 14 points to 4. I think Castlemahon were far, far closer to Kiel than that scoreline would suggest. So I have no doubt that they have a number of players that were involved in those games back in, was it 2014?
13. It was
13.
Against, I just checked there against Kiel, 13.
Yeah, 2013. They have a number of players that will have learned from that and will bring that experience to the new crop on Saturday. Like it's really huge glamour football tie, and obviously the expectation, Jack, is that there's going to be a huge crowd in Cooley-Roo on Saturday. Now I understand that there is a traffic plan and all in place for supporters that are coming to Cooley-Roo. But it's a huge day. Any day that David Clifford is in town, Jack, it's a big day. Like a serious footballer. We needn't look further than his performance in the Kerry final against the Mark O'Shea trained coach Listry, when himself and his brother salvaged the game, pulled the victory out of the jaws of defeat in that particular one. They got a late goal and a point to force it to extra time and won the game in extra time. And I think David Clifford got 2-12 in the game. Yeah. And his brother, who was playing centre back, got 1-2. And you must remember, Jack, that Clifford brothers in 2022 are probably the most decorated footballers in Ireland in 2022. They have National League medals. They have Munster and All Ireland medals. They have Kerry senior football medals with East Kerry. And they have Kerry junior medals with Fossa. There'd be an awful lot of players would love to get that in a 15-year career. Not a mind get it in less than 12 months, But it gives you a sense of the importance of David Clifford and Paddy. Like there's no use in ignoring him either, because he's a workaholic around the field.
Yeah, plays centre back for
now. It probably suits Castlemahon, and we're talking here now nearly for 5 minutes on this, Jack, and 4.5 minutes of it have been devoted to the Cliffords. And Castlemahon will probably be relishing that and loving that, because they'll be coming under the radar. In many ways, it's a free pass for Castlemahon.
Yeah.
Fossa arrive in West Limerick unbookable favourites. Yeah, but unbookable favourites don't always win games, Jack.
Yeah.
And it'll be very, very interesting to see how Castlemahon will set out to deal with David Clifford. I think it's one of those things like the 12 Apostles. Is it I, Lord, that will be delegated to mark him?
It'll be a tough conversation, one of those players this weekend. But the nature of competitive players, they'll be wanting to mark the best in the country. If you can limit Dave Clifford to 5 or 6 points from play, I think you're doing well, because he could easily score 2, 5 or 6.
Absolutely, and Castlemahon will absolutely relish this, and they will love it. They have a home venue. They'll have a very partisan home crowd that will be supporting them, not just from their own Fiona Castlemahon area, but from around the county and beyond, because the tentacles of the importance of David Clifford, spreads into every county, into Cork and everywhere. So I think this foregone conclusion thing that Fossa are going to be in the Munster final, Jack, I don't subscribe to it. And Raf accuses me in the past of having green mist in my eyes, Jack, but I honestly think there's justification for believing that Castlemahon can give a very good account of themselves.
Yeah, I think they'll definitely give a good account of themselves. They showed that against the Waterford champions, but having the likes of the Cliffords there now, I would say is probably going to be a bridge too far. Just before we move from that game, Castlemahon have put up a notice about just getting to the game. There'd be a one-way traffic system to the match. Be coming in from Bunoak Bridge towards Quaid Park. There'll be no access to Coolyroo by road from the Kilmeedy side. They urging people to get there early because there might be a bit of a walk. But they're putting all the plans in place, and a fair play to all involved in Castlemahon and Coolyroo. And best wishes to Castlemahon, to the Piarsaigh, and to Newcastle this weekend.
Absolutely, Jack. But before I go from that, the game in Castlemahon is what our great organisation is all about. Here we have a small parish in West Limerick hosting one of the greatest footballers that the game has ever seen. This is what it's all about. They're putting out all the stops, the community coming together to roll out the red carpet for, let's face it, like a very, 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 very special footballer. But I'm sure like that the pleasantries will end once the ball is thrown in and the teams cross the white line. It will be helter-skelter by both sides. I'm one of those, at the risk of being accused of being in a deluded world, Jack, I am one of those that believe that Castlemahon will give it everything. They will give it everything.
They'll definitely give it everything, and hopefully it'll be enough to upset the odds. Moving on from the football this weekend, we're going to look back now at another busy weekend. We had 3 Limerick sides in action in the Munster Club Hurling Championships. Start with Monaleen and St Kierans. We had 2 from 2 on Saturday. Unfortunately, it appears she couldn't join them in the senior final, but Monaleen beat St Joseph's Dora Bearfield in a brilliant game in Kilmallock. Monaleen led for majority of it, then St Joseph's got in front, and then a brilliant Mark O'Dwyer goal snatched it towards the end for Monaleen. I think deserving over the course of a contest, but really absorbing game. They went one better than they did in 16 when they were beaten by Kilmiley in a semi-final, and now they have a final against Roscrea to look forward to next weekend in Páirc Uí Rinn. Just on that game, Matt, St Joseph's gave it their all, but I think Monaleen, and you might agree with me, were thoroughly deserving over the course of the hour.
Well, Jack, I it's fresh in my mind because I had an argument with somebody yesterday that was of the opinion and very vociferous about it that Dora Bearfield were robbed. Robbed of what?
You'll get those.
Typical of the naysayers that had us for 45 years without a title, Jack. Dora Bearfield were far from robbed. It was a very, very good game that Monaleen thoroughly deserved to win. And I have made the point, I don't know if I've made it in this medium or not, but I will make it now anyway, and I've made it to a number of people, that it's a totally different Monaleen team that has been promoted to that which was relegated 12 months ago.
Yeah.
It's the whole structure of the team, the whole structure of the approach, the infusion of young players who are stepping up to the mark, and guys like Larkin Lyons, Mark O'Dwyer, Doyle, who are taking leadership positions and leading from the front. Great to see Andrew Latouche Cosgrave getting well over a half, came on before half time, did his job. Great to see him coming back to the type of form that we know he's capable of. It augurs well for Monaleen. It's a game I enjoyed. The They were 5 points up at half time. Could have been more. Now when Dora Bearfield got their way back into the game and actually went ahead twice. The first time they went ahead immediately at the other end, Ed Doyle sent over an equaliser, but they went back ahead again. I think it was Cian Bam that put them back in front. But after that, a mistake in the Dora Bearfield attack now as distinct from defence. A ball was passed away. It was turned over by Monaleen, and it worked its way through 1 or 2 or 3 phases before it came to Marco Dwyer, who head off on a beeline for goal and blasted it to the net. And as you know, as it is said, the rest is history. And that put him 2 points up, and I think Donegal Darley made it 3. And at that stage, Dora Bearfield pressed, but you got the sense right through those concluding minutes. There were 6 or 7 of them, or 8 of them maybe, that Monaleen wasn't going to relinquish what they had, and which was a place in the Munster final. And I thought Monaleen actually, it was a very, very good and Jack, it was an improved performance on the county final from Monaleen. And Monaleen's performance in the county final was an improvement on previous games, because I had seen him in the semi-final and I had seen him through the group stages, and there seems to be measurable improvement going on game and game, and that was you just wondered going into the semi-final last Saturday how they would adapt, whether that progress would be maintained or not. The answer was a very, very emphatic yes. But Jack, they will have to make further progress now. And you'll say you couldn't have a podcast without O'Callaghan cribbing, but crib I will, and it is the
venue.
They face a Rossgrey side who were playing Senior B last year, and Tipperary County Board, in their wisdom, at the start of this year, decided to redesignate it Senior B as Premier Intermediate Championship. So
we'll have that with St Kierans. We'll be thinking that as well.
They will, and rightly so. And I'll be coming to that, and I have already mentioned that.
Yeah,
and, there is an inequity about this. Like, counties are entitled, I suppose, to decide on what of the structures of their championship. But when the championships are feeding into a provincial championship, I think there's a certain level of onus on the provincial council to ensure that there's a level playing field.
Yeah. It's hard to tell. Limerick obviously changed Premier Intermediate in 2014 and has been a whirlwind success. And obviously Castlemahon are Premier Junior winners this year. They're in a Munster final, so I think it works every way. St Kierans obviously will play the defending Munster champions in a Munster final. I don't know if we've had that scenario before where a team retained their title.
No, we haven't had. We haven't had it.
Yeah, look, it's a point out. We can't control that, but St Kierans are into a Munster final.
Hold it a second now. I disagree with you there. We have the right and the entitlement to express our annoyance about it.
Oh yeah, no, that's fair enough. But I'm just saying with the final next week, it is going to be Kierans and Ballygunner, and I don't really think the Kierans lads will care. They'll just be wanting to play Munster Championship. It probably is a bit unfair that they are playing the defending Munster champions. They were All Ireland runners up, I think. But firstly, on St Kierans, we'll look ahead to that game fully with Ballygunner next weekend. That game is on the 3rd or the 4th of December. But their win over the Banner, they showed everything that's good about St Kierans, that they got an early lead and they were clawed back in, and Shane Meehan leveled with the last puck of the ball. But similarly, in extra time with the last puck of the ball, Donny Nolan stepped up and he came on as a substitute. I think he's had an awful look with injuries, Donny, in fairness to him. But St Kierans will battle to the very end, and they just persevered after extra time, and it'll give them huge confidence going into that final.
Absolutely. Delighted for Donny Nolan. He got 3 points after coming on. And I make this point about Donny Nolan, of course, was involved in 10 years ago, Jack, and suffered an injury which ended his participation in the Munster final early in the first half. And St Kierans subsequently lost by 2 points, and could legitimately argue, had Donny Nolan been on the field, you could have a different result, because you know what he brings. Now it's 10 years on, but he still has the guile, he still has the experience, and he's what a sub to bring on. But it was typical of what we've seen of St Kierans. Now I'm going on reports that I have of the match from who representative that was there, and from one or two of the Kierans lads that I was talking to since, but it was typical of St Kierans, like we were Jack, earlier on in the podcast, we were lauding their performances and through the Limerick Championship. Like they went through the Limerick Championship with 8 straight wins. Very, very difficult thing to do. Go through group stage after come through without a glove being laid on you. Then when you're quarter-final, semi-final, and final. Now the only black spot in they've 9 games played now before they've got to the Munster final.
Yeah.
And the only black spot in that, and I hate bringing up black spots in an otherwise unblemished run, but they rectified it very, very quickly, and that was a desperate, no-show bad performance in the first half of the county final. And I suppose that would be a bit unfair maybe to Drumculloch Bradford, who played very, very well in the first half. But here is where St Kierans' resilience comes in. When they came out for the second half in that county final, Jack, they were a totally, totally different team, and quickly reverted back to the St Kierans that we had been used to during the summer, going out, winning their matches, and being decisive. But a backdrop to all this, Jack, you must remember that St Kierans were very, very unlucky to lose the county final last year.
Yeah,
which makes their performance this year, Jack, all the more credible. Now, I know they have a hard core of experience. They have about 10 players that have been through Munster Championship fair before in 2012. And that must stand to them big time. But last Sunday or Saturday, they really, really dug it out in Ennis. And I suppose Shane Meehan, he got that equaliser, but when it came to extra time and when it came to a show of resilience, you'd back St Kierans all day, and that's the way it transpired.
Yeah, and look, they'll need all that resilience in the final. As I said, we'll talk about that in depth next week, but they will have the champions for company in Mallow. Obviously, the Piarsaigh then were looking to make it 3 out of 3 for Limerick sides, but fell to the defending All-Ireland champions Ballygunner. I think the Piarsaigh were dominant in the first half, 2-11 to 1-9. It could have been more. They started better, but Ballygunner as champions do, slowly just kept chipping away. And when they took the lead, and Patrick Sherrill got that goal, they didn't really look like losing from that position. It was a real champions display. But these two sides have taken club hurling and Munster to a whole new level, Matt. Like, it was inter-county standard out there.
Oh yeah, I suppose, yeah, and I suppose the defeat the defeat of Piarsaigh, I suppose, Jack, is only compounded by the sight of Mike Casey leaving the field late in the game, and let's hope that it's not a serious injury, because when it comes to doing your stint with injuries, certainly Mike Casey has done it, and we just hope that it's not a serious injury, and we just wish Mike the very, very best to look for a very, very quick recovery. What we saw on Sunday was something that we haven't seen before, We saw two Na Piarsaigh possibly, Jack. We saw the Na Piarsaigh of the first half, which were irresistible, and led by 5 points at half time, and deservedly led at half time by 5 points. Now, the wides tally in the first half was 6-2 to Ballygunner, but the Piarsaigh weren't in the slightest bit flattered by a 5 points lead, Jack. You'd have to say that at half time. And the expectation was that in typical Na Piarsaigh fashion, like that, they would drive home the advantage in the second half. But for some reason, it didn't happen. Now, Mike Foley was definitely a loss to Na Piarsaigh, Jack.
Yeah, he was.
Make no mistake about that. Playing very well, had got his name on the score sheet, having a great year with the club. They had to replace him, I think, about a minute before half time. And of course, it was a huge blow psychologically, if nothing else, psychologically and everywhere, to lose Mike Casey with 10 minutes to go when the game was in the melting pot. And there was one very defining moment there. If you look back on the game, Jack, I think the sides were level and there was a point in it, and Conor Boylan was through in goal. And somehow somebody got a hook in, and Conor only hooked the ball over the bar when there looked like a goal at his mercy. A goal at that stage, Jack, could have changed everything, you know. But that is not to sugarcoat what was a totally uncharacteristic Na Piarsaigh performance in the second half. I thought it lacked the usual drive. It lacked the usual cohesion, I thought, in the second half, the usual rhythm. They sort of just didn't get into the groove in the second half, which was very, very disappointing. And yet they were so close to doing it. But you're right, Jack. This Ballygunner are a formidable side, and you know they can have a greater notch or a greater credential than you travel to Limerick and you beat the champions of Limerick and you beat Na Piarsaigh. You know that is the ultimate badge of honour in fairness, and they did it and have put themselves in a strong position now going forward. But overall, a very, very disappointing day for Na Piarsaigh. A day that was un-Na Piarsaigh-like, particularly in the second half, Jack. Because certainly we didn't see in the second half the Na Piarsaigh that we had seen through the Limerick Championship. There were times during the Limerick Championship when they didn't reach the dizzy heights that they normally reach, but they were games that they hadn't to do it. They were quite comfortable. But when the chips were down, Jack, Na Piarsaigh were at their very best. None more so than in the county final, which was a display for the ages, because they were up against the defending county champions. And in fairness, they just blew Kilmallock out of it on the day. Make no mistake about it. But whilst they reached that level, I would say they reached that level in the first half. They didn't come near reaching that level in the second half. Now, how much of that is down to the way Na Piarsaigh or Ballygunner regrouped, I don't know. You know, but I thought Patrick O'Mahony, he sort of got the freedom of the Gaelic grounds on Sunday. He ended up with 13.7 from play. You know, and
he was the main difference.
Someone made a crucial stage, particularly in the home run. But I'm very disappointed for Na Piarsaigh. Very, very disappointed for him, because I was a firm believer, and you heard my comments last week, and that I felt they were going to beat Ballygunner, and I felt that they had the wherewithal to beat Ballygunner, but Na Piarsaigh aren't a bad team because they lost this one, Jack. And the Piarsaigh aren't gone anywhere because they lost this one.
No, they aren't. And I would put them in as favourites for the Limerick Championship next year, just by virtue of their display throughout Championship. And I just think Ballygunner, I think it was more down to Ballygunner hitting their stride than the Piarsaigh, falling off. But an exceptional game, but disappointment for the Piarsaigh. Obviously, Moving quickly then, we had the Premier and 21 hurling final on Sunday afternoon. Ballybrown beat Mungret St Pauls 20 to 13 points in Ballygran. You were at it. It continues this remarkable run for Ballybrown that they've now won 4 minor titles and 2 21 titles in 5 years. I think it's the likes of Colin Coughlin, Aidan O'Connor would have been part of every one of those, you know.
And the news is that they're eligible again next year.
Well, they are, because they played 20s for Limerick this year. But on the game itself, Matt, it seemed nip and tuck for a large share of it, and Ballybrown pulled away in the end.
Yeah, Jack. I was at it, and it was billed as a potential classic, and in all honesty, Jack, it didn't fall far short of that. I thought it was an excellent game. First of all, if you were somebody that didn't know anything and just rambled into Ballygran, you would have trouble in accepting that it was under 21. I mentioned this before about particularly Ballybrown. They're an absolutely physically powerful side. But the quality of the hurling, Jack, right throughout was very, very, very good, of a very, very, very high standard. And you would have no problem, Jack, if you were in Ballygran, understanding why Limerick have won 4 All-Irelands in the last 5 years. You'd be saying to yourself, if this is what's coming through the ranks, it's easy to see it. It was an excellent game. Now, just a reprise of the game itself. Mungret had the breeze in the first half, and it was a stiff breeze that blew down to the scoreboard end in Ballygran, or blew down to the village end in Ballygran. And the expectation was that, especially when Liam Lynch put over a point from a free, literally within 40 seconds of the start, that they were going to build up a bit of a lead. But Ballybrown, they dug in, and they had named Colin Coughlin from midfield and Mikey Gavin at centre back. They swapped them around. It had the desired effect. Colin Coughlin, formed a half-back line that in the first half were absolutely imperious, Jack, with Tomas O'Connor, who has considerable experience playing senior with Ballybrown over the last couple of years, and Ross Kenny, who was immense also, the team captain. And they really dictated the terms of engagement, Ballybrown did, in that first half, despite facing the elements. And by half-time, they had established a 2 points lead. Now, the expectation and the buzz around the ground was that Ballybrown were really going to drive on, and this would be, that it was going to be a one-sided affair. But obviously, nobody told Mungret that.
Yeah.
And they came out in the second half and hit the ground running. And within seconds of the restart, Kierans Monaleen, who was playing wing back for Mungret, had his second point of the game. And they drew level, and the game was level, Jack, with 18 minutes of normal time remaining, and it was then that Ballybrown sort of recaptured the rhythm of the first half, and recaptured the type of rhythm that we know they're capable of, and drove on, and from that point on, I'd say for the last 18 minutes, they restricted Mungret St Pauls to a single point, and whilst they scored 8 points. Now, during that spell, Aidan O'Connor was outstanding, both from frees, and got a couple of great points, from play late in the game, but it was too late to matter. Mungret St Pauls got a penalty. Liam Lynch was fouled, and it's great to see Liam Lynch back, and not only back, but playing at the top of his game. I thought he had a very, very good game and a very, very effective game for Mungret St Pauls. He took the penalty, but it was well saved by Josh O'Reilly in the Ballybrown goal, and that was the end of it. It's 20 points to 13 on the day, Jack. Probably a fair reflection on what transpired between the white lines.
Two teams that are building, Matt, and you wouldn't be surprised to potentially see this as a senior final down the line. Obviously, Mungret won the 17s recently. A couple of those players you mentioned, Kierans Monaleen and Fintan Fitz and Ballybrown have a lot of that team underage again next year. I know the whole Mungret starting 15 is underage next year, so the
right.
future is certainly bright for the two of those clubs, no doubt. I know we're under a bit of time pressure here, so we'll move on swiftly. The Junior B final, neither of us were able to make that on Sunday, but Bruff were 3-16 to 3-9 winners over Doon. Obviously, after losing last year's final, you know, Bruff came back and won it. I said every week, but we had another scenario that they'll obviously have an All-Ireland campaign to look forward to. So if you don't mind, Matt, we'll look forward to that game later down the line because we are under time pressure. But congratulations to Bruff coming back from losing.
Absolutely. No, I know there was some shenanigans at halftime about the scoreline and this, that, and the other thing. But I think that there can be no argument. You know, Bruff went one better than they did last year, and they have the Kennedy Munster and All Ireland series to look forward to, and you know, I would be expecting that in that competition that I'm looking at the composition of the Bruff team, most of the lads who I would know, and I think they're well equipped, you know, to represent Limerick very well in that competition.
Yeah, we'll be touching more on Bruff later on the line. Obviously, this weekend as well is a very special game for Adair. They're in All Ireland Camogie quarter final action against Tara from London. They're on their way to Ruislip on Saturday. Just a huge game for Adair, Matt. Obviously, we don't know much about the opposition, but it's really novel for a team to not only play in an All Ireland series, but to play a team from London and be able to travel over. That game is on at 12 o'clock in McGovern Park. But, you know, Adair have shown thus far that they're well capable of going all the way, and they'll back themselves in this, no doubt.
Yeah, but novel in the sense, Jack, that it's another opportunity for Adair and the rise of Adair Camogie to take another joint step forward. You know, junior champions of Limerick in 2021, intermediate champions in 2022, Munster junior champions in 2022. Like the world is their oyster at this stage. Now, logistically, it poses a problem having to get to London, and now the game is on at 12 o'clock on Saturday in Ruislip, which is the GA headquarters in London, and I fancy Adair on this now. Now, I've done a little research in Tara, who are their opponents. Now, the research didn't tell me very much, other than that they beat Thomas McCurtains in the All Britain final, and that there's just one thing about it, Jack, that struck me when I was looking at the composition of the Tara squad. Now it includes Claire Enright from Granaballangary, won a county senior medal with Granaballangary, represented Limerick at underage. She's likely to be lining out at full back. She's the only Limerick representative on the squad that I saw. But the squad is drawn mainly, Jack, which is something for Adair to look out for. They're drawn mainly from players from Kilkenny, Galway, Cork, Wexford. Top camogie counties in this country. You know, yeah. So you don't know of what standard. None of the names stick out to me, except Claire Enright. You don't know what standard they would have attained before they left here. But it's safe to say that players from those counties, Jack, will be well equipped to play camogie.
That obviously, there is competitive divisions over in England, but like this will be all about Adair for us anyway. You know,
all about Adair for us. Having said that, even though Adair maybe without the services of Aisling Connolly, who will be a big loss at full forward, I fancy Adair to come through it. And then they'll face an All-Ireland semi-final against the Ulster champions. But a little sideshow to it on and she's never a sideshow. She's the centrepiece when Limerick or Adair Limerick or Adair are playing Camogie. Cueva Costello. Of course, Cueva will be very, very central in that game against Tara. But after the quarter-final, she'll be making a mad dash back to Croke Park or back to Dublin for the Camogie All-Stars on Saturday night. And we wish Cueva the very, very best of luck. If anybody ever deserved an All-Star, Jack, Cueva Costello deserves it. And
it'll be
if she doesn't get it, Jack, don't dare draw down Camogie All-Stars next week.
I won't. But yeah, Cueva was phenomenal for Limerick, and she's carried that form into Adair, and not carried Adair, but she's one of the central players. And it'd be a wonderful day if you could win in London and then win an All-Star. And from my limited knowledge of Tara, I think Adair have a brilliant chance. They're such a strong team, and we had said at the start of the Intermediate Championship that we thought they'd be one of the front runners, and they proved that they won. They beat Croke in the final, and then they beat Bricky Rangers and Munster, and now they're on their way to London. So the best of luck to.
What I see about it is there's another point I make, and I think I made it last week in passing, Jack. They beat Bricky Rangers in the Munster final, and they beat him by 4 points. It was a very, very comfortable 4 points victory, Jack. They dominated that for long periods without putting Bricky Rangers away. Now, if they can cultivate that when they have teams on the back foot to just go that extra bit and put them away, then I think we're in for a long run to Christmas with Adair. I think I honestly believe that they have that potential, because we saw the Limerick minor team for 2023 was named the week before last, and 4 of the Adair starting team are on it. You had Amy Mullins, you had Ciara Griffin, you had Ciara Dunn, who were absolutely outstanding in the Munster final, and Poppy Giltinan, who was player of the match in the Munster final. And I'm only saying that, Jack, to highlight that what you have, the experience and the youth running through the team. If you're a paragon for what should be the perfect blend of experience and youth and experience, I think this Adair team has it. Because the like of the Grace McNamara, Sophie O'Callaghan, Cueva Costello's, Lauren Ryan, who's better known probably as a Limerick footballer, but who's playing fantastic stuff at the moment with the Camogie team. You have the like of these girls who will provide the inspiration for what are very, very, very talented, Jack, young players.
Yeah, they have a very, very talented squad, and the best luck to Adair this weekend. That rounds out the podcast. Before we go, just a mention to the over 40s game this Thursday night in St Patrick's, Limerick. Over 40s versus Galway over 40s in a challenge football game. The squad list and the team management is up on the website if you want to have a look at that. No fee to go to the game, just donations to Milford Hospice, and all the proceeds from the game will go to Milford Hospice, a very worthy cause. We've seen a lot of Limerick J teams and clubs, organise donations for Milford Hospice. So the best luck to both teams on Thursday night at 8 o'clock in Rabogue. Best of luck to the teams this weekend in Munster Championship action, Newcastle and the Piarsaigh, Castlemahon, and also to Adair in London. A huge thank you to you, as always, Matt. We were quicker today, just over the hour. We tried to keep it to the hour, so that's why we were rushing there. But a huge thank you to you, Matt, and a thank you to everyone for listening. We'll be back next week. So thank you again, Matt, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jack.
Impression again, we get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods, and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there